This is my first slide. I have no clue what's on it. I hope you guys understand. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. So maybe it's easier if I put it in English for me. So I'm going to talk about WP-CLI and plugin development with feature and past compatibility. So my name is, like he said, is Andreas Creten. It's in Dutch. You can say whatever you want. Americans call me Andy, if that's easier. So I'm a developer, mainly not developing anymore. I'm more a manager right now. But they invited me to speak here, and I was happy to do it. So during my talk, if you have any questions, you just raise your finger or something, or you shout, and I would be happy to answer them. So you don't have to wait till the end. So I'm sorry for the person who's running around with the mic. They'll have to run around all the time. So yeah, just shout and I'll answer. So maybe first a bit about myself. I have two companies. One is called Made with Love. It's a company based in Belgium. I'll explain a bit more about that later on. And then I have another company which is called AdApp, which is based in San Francisco. So I fly around all the time between Belgium and San Francisco. This is an iPhone application. It has nothing to do with WordPress at all, but it's just doing something different than what I'm doing now, or what I did in the past, basically. So then, I guess no one knows these kind of companies, but some people might know WP-CLI. So has anyone ever seen it? Some used it? Okay, it's quite okay. So if you don't use it, you should use it because it's awesome. But actually, the first time I go on a conference talking about WP-CLI, I never did it before. So there is some other people that talk about it, which is very good, so that I don't have to do it. But maybe it's good because they don't know the full history of how I came to make WP-CLI. So I'll start with that. I'll give you some history about what I started on it. So basically, I think it started in 2009 or something, a really long time ago. And I founded my company, Made with Love, and we were quite famous for doing crazy stuff. So one day, a very big forum, actually, community asked me to rewrite their system. They were using PHP-BB. I guess some people know PHP-BB. And also WordPress has a system which is called BBPress. So they wanted me to convert PHP-BB to BBPress. So that's actually how it all started. So what I had to do for that is, I don't know if you can read it. It's quite okay. So what I had to do for that is, I had to convert 2 million forum posts from one format to another format. So I had to write command line tools to do that because it was a huge task. Because there was a Mac Pro with, I think, 16 cores has been running on a week for it because it was so complex. So that was my first encounter with WordPress, basically. I didn't do anything with WordPress before. But it was a very nice encounter, and it was fun to do. And apparently, according to the BBPress forums, we're still well known for it. There is threads going on. And actually, last week, I got an email from PhoneBlocks. I don't know if you know them, but it's a Google-owned company to ask us if we could do some BBPress consulting for them. We were not doing it anymore. So that's actually, I think, where it started. So we became quite well known for our WordPress work, but we only did one site in WordPress before. And then actually at one night, I think at 3 in the morning or something, this guy called me. He's called ZMK, and he's the editor-in-chief of The Next Web. Do you know The Next Web, the website? thenextweb.com? No? Yeah, it's quite a famous big website. They have millions of users, and they had hired a developer to make them a new WordPress theme. So when the day they wanted to launch it, it completely failed. And he called me to the rescue at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I think I stayed up for like 3 full days to fix it. And at the end, I managed to fix it. And actually, this developer, he was just a normal WordPress developer, and that's what I'm going to talk about later. And he didn't take anything to account, like caching and stuff like that. So if you have a website that attracts like 7 million visitors a month, and you don't have any caching in place, then you're doing a wrong job. So then I had to check my LinkedIn profile, but apparently I quit The Next Web in September 2011. So I worked for them for a year, and I cleaned up all the mess. And when I was done with that, I quit the job, and someone else took over. A bit about the structure of The Next Web. Back then, it was, I think, more than 30 different WordPress websites. in the WordPress Network. I think there's another call going on right now about how you can use WordPress Network, if I'm not mistaken. WordPress Network is great. Was called WordPress multi-site earlier, but managing it is a mess. I know it also from the guys at Automatic. They have like WordPress.com, right, which is a complete, yeah, it's a WordPress network, and it's just a mess. If you want to change something on all the sites, you have to write a script for it, right? So, and actually that's where I found out that there was no command line tool like Drush for Drupal, and I was like, that's crazy, there is no command line tool for WordPress, let's create it. Basically, the kind of issues we were having at the Next Web were basically stuff like we had a varnish in front of our site, and we needed to flush varnish on the deploy, or we needed to enable options on a certain deploy, or enable a plugin after the deploy, because we were deploying automatically with Capistrano. So we wanted to automate a bit how we did things. So one of the things I would love have been able to do, and actually I can do it now, but back then it was crazy to do it. I would like to have a command like this, which says WP cache flush, which would flush all the caches, and I should not go into all the administration pages of all the blogs to flush all the caches. So actually, then I checked my logs. I don't know exactly the date, but on September the 9th in 2011, so right when I quit my job at the Next Web, I was studying for my exams. I think it was my last exams, actually. So I was still studying back then. And so I was so bored of studying that I was like, okay, let's create this thing. So in one night, actually, I made it. So what I did, I just took Drush, I ported it to WordPress somehow, and started working on it. So this was my first commit. Yeah, the Beamer is not really well configured, but it's going to be an issue for later, but it's okay for now. So yeah, this is the first commit. You don't need to see anything there. So we always had issues with caching and stuff like that, so that's why I created it. Very basic in the beginning. Then actually, maybe you can see these graphs. Yeah, okay, you can see them. So actually, my involvement in the WP-CLI has been very minimal. But of course, I started the project. That's also why I never talked about it, because I was like, yeah, I don't know anything about it. If you ask me a question about it now, I have no clue. So of course, you ask me why I'm standing on this stage then, I'll explain it a bit. So only 20 days after I put it on GitHub, this guy, he's called Cristi Burca or something like that. Maybe you guys can pronounce it better. He's from Romania. He reached out to me and said, like, hey, I want to collaborate on it. I was like, yeah, sure. So I have no idea how he found me or whatever, but I was really happy to have some help on that. And from this image, you can really see I'm only the 5th contributor with only 52 commits, which is crazy. And this guy has like almost 2,000 commits, so that's awesome. So I did something very efficiently, right? So I still have my name on it, of course. I still own the domains and everything, and I started it. So actually then on a WordCamp in the Netherlands, I met Cristi in real time. Or real life, sorry. It was in 2012, 25th of March 2012, and then we decided that we would make it a separate organization on GitHub, and we would give it a website and everything, so then it actually really started. I checked it yesterday. My last commit on the project was on November the 14th in 2012. That's a really long time ago. And then actually, 2 months before I left, Daniel Bachhuber, he was still working at Automatic back then, I think. He joined also the project, and he took it under his arms, and he's still doing it now, because also Cristi has left the whole WordPress scene to go into Python, actually. So that means that for me, it's 2.5 years ago that I have contributed to it. What I did in these 2.5 years, I still supported them. I support them financially with my company, so that everything's running and they have servers and stuff. But also I did some Twitter stuff and stuff like that. So I talk about it a lot as well. But and then actually in 2013, so I'm very grateful for the people that worked on it, because I put my name on it, but I didn't do anything, as you can see from the picture. So I went to Romania actually in person to again thank Cristi for his involvement. So I've met him there. I spent 2 nights with him and drinking a lot of beer. So I think that was enough for saying thank you. And then actually a few months later, he quit the project. So, But WP-CLI is very nice, and it's really about a community, because WordPress needed this, that's clear. There is a lot of commands that we have in the WP-CLI integrated. This is the list. I have, if I remember it correctly, when I started, I think the only thing I had was the plugin thing. I don't know where it is even. Should be on the list somewhere. Plugins and themes. So you can enable a plugin, you can enable a theme, and also the options or something. That was what I initially wanted. But my bigger goal for this thing was, at the end, I want to have a system where you can deploy WordPress automatically and also can keep track changes in, for example, the database, because that's of course the biggest issue on WordPress, that you don't have a database migration system, which you would have in another framework. MVC frameworks have it. So if you make a change locally, you have to do it manually online, and that's stupid. So you need to have a system to automate it, and I think somewhere on this list there should be something to do it. I don't know. But actually, Daniel wrote it, and it's awesome. So now you can do a change locally with a script, right? And then you can also let it run on the server when you deploy. So you don't have to do anything manually anymore. You don't have to go into the admin interface to quickly do something, because otherwise the site is down. That's what we had to do at the Next Web, which really sucks. And then more awesome even is that actually people started writing community commands. There's actually, oh wait. These are the community commands. Okay. These are the community commands. No, those are the commands defined in plugins, even better. So this is basically third-party plugin writers, and that's actually what I had in mind when I started writing WP-CLI. I was like, I'm not going to write all these commands for all these plugins. I just make it pluggable, like WordPress is, so that everyone can write a command for it. That was actually the first goal I wanted to achieve. And so actually it worked, because you can see how many things we have. So that's awesome. So then indeed, of course, we also have the internal stuff. So here you will find the plugin, you will find the theme somewhere, theme with a T, of course. So this kind of stuff, these are the basics. These are the ones that are written by external parties. So you have, like, I guess, W3 total caches on there somewhere. There will be also the WP super cache. It's here. There you go. So you can manage actually plugins from the command line. And so as a plugin writer, I don't know how many people ever wrote a plugin yourself. How many? Okay, so whenever you write a plugin, it's so damn easy to also have a command line interface for it, and people will love your plugin because you have a command line interface. Because then if they deploy it on a, for example, the WP engine, I don't know if you know them, it's a very big hosting company, they use WP-CLI, so if you have a command line interface for your plugin, it's very more likely that they will install it. Or also WordPress VIP, for example, they also have WP-CLI. They have changed all their scripts to use WP-CLI, actually. So that's awesome. Then I guess this is the same slide. So yeah, I did my slides this morning and yesterday. So then there's, of course, a list of other tools you could use to work with WP-CLI. As far as I understand, also, for example, PHP Storm now has WP-CLI integrated in the application, which I think is great. That's awesome. So yeah, he's shaking yes, so that's great. Someone told me, I don't know. So there is a lot of stuff you could use. There is a huge community. Really, you can contribute. If you do that, there is a good library. I mean, there is a whole thing written on our wiki how you can do that. And we're very open to that because there is not too many maintainers of the project. I think Daniel is pulling it right now. But we need more, of course. And also, hosting companies are starting to integrate it in their managed, not managed, but they pre-install it on WordPress servers. So for example, one-on-one, where Marco talked about this earlier today, they have it, and which is awesome. So you can just go in there, you don't have to install anything, and you can manage your WordPress installation, do WP-CLI, and if you add a plugin, it knows automatically that you have this plugin in your installation, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to ask them, hey, can you also enable it for this plugin? No, that's how WP-CLI works. So then, of course, you think, yeah, mission accomplished. Yeah, sort of, but not really. The reason is not really because I actually had in mind more crazy things. So first of all, it's very good that we are now able to deploy WordPress without having to go and click around in the admin interface. and we can do database migrations, but there is some things that need to be changed. And I'm going to talk about that right now. I have to put a little disclaimer. So, like I said before, I haven't touched WordPress actually, I've never used WP-CLI myself in a production environment. So I've never been a user of WP-CLI. I know how it works. I don't know how it works now, but I guess it still works the same. Because the interface, for example, to add a command, it hasn't changed. So I guess I did a good job there. So I do know how to write code, right? I don't know the WordPress coding standard, so if you'll see my code, it might be a bit different. And I also didn't test the code I wrote. I have a very good code writing skill. I can write for hours and then run it, and it works. But don't try to just copy my code and run it, because it might break. So, but you will get the idea. So it's a bit pseudo code, like they call it. You get an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, I hope the resolution is good enough. Oh, it's awesome. So, I'm going to talk a bit, and I don't want to point any fingers to any plugin creator, but there are some stupid plugin creators around. So I don't know if anyone knows the domain mapping plugin, which is used for WordPress networks to say which domain, if you enter domain, which WordPress network it should go to, or which WordPress site it would go to. Very nice plugin. We use it all the time, basically. But if you look at the code, it's a pain in the ass. So I'm going to point out some things that you cannot do when you're writing a plugin, or you should avoid at all times. Sometimes it's needed, but you should avoid it at all times. Actually, what you never should do is this. All right? WP database is awesome, and you can do a lot of things with it. But this makes your plugin so hard to manage, because if you don't define the tables correctly, for example, for WordPress multi-site, then you're screwed. If you have these kind of, for example, this one is not used for WordPress multi-site, so it doesn't have the prefix, which makes sense because it's a table which goes over all the sites. But also, if you make a change to a database on a table that is, for example, used also by another plugin, if you would go directly in WP posts table and make a change there with a what is it, a query or an insert or an update, then you cannot know who is changing that value. Because then you have to go read all their code, and in here, for example, they're creating more tables. This is crazy. I don't know why they need these tables. I do know why they need it, but it's not needed. So there's way better ways to do it. And then it gets even worse. What they do is this function is maybe create database, right? It does a show tables like, so it checks if the table exists. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it, okay? So one of the things is you need to have also the create, you should be able to create tables, and so it might be already a permission issue, but that's one thing. Worse is, they try to do it every time you load the admin of WordPress. So we had a lot of issues with the Next Web, for example, where the admin was so damn slow. And this is really because stupid plugins do these kind of things. Because they go check in the database all the time. If you have a database installation which is already a bit overloaded, and they go to do these show tables all the time, it just mess. Some plugins are even worse. They don't even do it when you go into an admin page, but they do it on every page load of WordPress, which is even more crazy. So yeah, just don't do it. There's better ways to do it. I'll try to explain them now, or give my IDs on it. So there is another plugin. It does already some things correctly, right? It's called Google Analytics. Don't use it because it's crap, but it's just a good example. Use the one from Yoast. It's way better. So what it does, it uses a registration, so a hook to register the plugin, and also to deactivate the plugin. So when you enable the plugin, it will actually run this code, which makes completely sense, right? So in this case, actually the maybe create database should have been done when creating the plugin, instead of doing it like this. So what it is wrong is this, web property ID, right? It sets an option in WordPress. It's something all plugins try to do, and that's a good idea, of course, because you're not using the WP database here now. But the name is so universal that we had big issues with it. And it's not this plugin. I couldn't find the plugin it was actually. The plugin we were using, it was called GA_ID, right? So Google Analytics _ID. Very nice, very good name for an option, but then if you have two plugins trying to write the same option, then you're screwed. So we had that. So we had an issue that always was the wrong things going on, and we're like, what the hell is going on? And then actually the reason was because there was two plugins trying to manipulate the same option value, and that's of course not making any sense. And the one was doing it with a JSON string in it or whatever, and the other was just a plain value. So it conflicted completely. So that's why whenever you use an option, always prefix it for your plugin. Unless of course it is an option from WordPress itself, but then you should not do it with add option. There will be another function in WordPress somewhere to change the value. Right? So be careful with that. So always put a prefix on your options. Right? Hang on. I need to think. This slide is lost? Okay. So this is a plugin from Google Analytics from Yoast, right? So use this plugin instead. But it does a very good thing, but also it could be even better. Right? So what Yoast does is he has a default GA values function. And what it does, actually, he stores all his options only in one, he stores it in one option. So it's actually an array which is stored in options. You have only one option for the whole plugin. If you delete your plugin, right, then the option should be gone, and then you're all set, right? So what it does is it saves for every option he adds internally then, because it's not real WordPress options. So these are his internal options, and for each option he gives it a default value, which makes a lot of sense, because then you know what kind of value it should be. But I think we should go more extreme with that. I will show you later on. Because right now, for example, in WP-CLI, if we could parse this list and show you what the options would be. So then if you would, for example, put in an option, if you would want to set an option for a plugin, we would be able to show you what the values could be. So we would be able to say it could be one of these values. But then we need to have a more standardized way of doing it than we're doing here now. I don't know the solution for it, but we need to find a solution together once. And I remember actually why I have this slide in there. This slide is a piece of Yoast's plugin. You see this? Tidy up. So whenever someone is deinstalling his plugin, he's not doing any tidying up, because it says he needs to tidy up, but he's not doing it. So of course, when you promise something to a user, also do it. Okay? So this is some stuff you see with a lot of WordPress plugins, and actually WordPress, I'm sorry if I'm offending someone, WordPress is still where PHP was like 3 or 4 years ago, right? And actually PHP is making a huge transaction to, for example, using Composer and namespacing and everything, and WordPress is still way behind. And I think we as plugin developers, because the people at Automatic or WordPress, they're not going to change it, we as plugin developers can already adapt to this new world. There is stuff like WP packages. I don't know if you guys know it. Ever use it? No? You can use it to use Composer to install WordPress plugins, which makes a lot of sense. So use these kind of things, because it's very important for how also Automatic and WordPress will improve WordPress. So let's go over these. It's the things I ran through and a bit more. So avoid using the database directly. Use prefixes on option names. Try to sandbox everything. I'll explain that later on how you can do that. That means, for example, I have seen it before. Some plugins make a very generic class name, right? For example, cache. Very nice. But then if there's another plugin you install which also has a class name cache, then you're screwed, because then they conflict and then you need to go hack in the plugin. And then, of course, if you install an upgrade of the plugin, then you're screwed again. So try to sandbox everything. Give it, for example, a prefix in the class name. No one is going to call this function except for you, so you don't care. And if they want to do it, then they will know what they're doing. Use the install and deinstall hook. Clean up your crap, really, do it. Because otherwise, in your WordPress installation, you have a ton of things, especially for running WordPress blogs. I see like a lot of database tables from old plugins, and they're not cleaned up. And then you're figuring like, is this still used? But you cannot easily search for it, because they use this kind of WP, they have like the list with all the tables, and you cannot just quickly search for the table name, so then you need to figure out where it's coming from. Write proper documentation. A README file is not enough. You can go actually to the WP-CLI repository to see, for example, how we do documentation. It's of course not a WordPress plugin, but you will get some idea. Ideally, you put it on GitHub so that people can contribute. For example, if you have this issue with a class name which is conflicting with another class name, maybe just another developer will solve it for you, so you don't have to do any work. And then prepare for caching. This is something that most plugin developers, I don't know if they don't know it or they just forget, right? But really, I've managed big WordPress websites, and you cannot use half of the plugins because they don't have caching in mind. And that sucks, because then you have to build caching around it and everything, and that's just miserable. So, I wanted to start the plugin manifesto for WordPress. I haven't finished it completely. I'm not sure if I will finish it, but I just want to give you an idea of the things that actually should change within the WordPress community when you're writing plugins. One of the things is sandboxing your plugin environment. You can do this in multiple ways, like I said, with prefixes on your class names. Better is using namespaces. So you can use a namespace within your plugin, and it will never conflict with any other plugin or WordPress internal. So then you can use cache as a class name, and it will never conflict with any other class name in another plugin because it's also namespace. I'll show you in a bit, because it's very useful to then actually use the same class name. And that's very important. Then use predefined documented variables. So this is really what I had issues with when I started with WP-CLI, is I wanted to make a system to show the options that would be set by a plugin, so that a plugin would set for you. But there was no way from any plugin to figure out which options you're setting. So we should make a system within WordPress which for each plugin says this plugin will set these and these and these options. And if they try to set another option, then it's probably hacked, or they're doing something wrong and there should be an exception and they should fix it. But then it's also for security reasons it's very good. Because right now, if you get hacked by, I mean, if someone is hacking a plugin, I don't know how that would happen, but it could happen. And it gets automatically updated in your system, and it goes changing, I don't know which options, then you're screwed. So that's why you should predefine documented variables. Oh, sorry. And if you do that, we could even restrict the variables you can set so that we are sure that you'll never be able to set any values which you don't own, you know? And proper hook usage, that's something I see in WordPress a lot, is people that don't read the docs and they don't understand the WordPress hooks. It's very important to use the correct hooks because they make a lot of sense most of the time. Sometimes there is no hook, then you need to work around it and figure out how to solve it. One of the things I was also thinking about is compatibility checks. So for example, you can never install the WP Super Cache with W3 Total Cache. So this would be something that should be defined somewhere in a plugin, that if you try to do that, it fails. This could be, for example, in the composer file, you could say, this is incompatible with that plugin, or we need at least this plugin version from another plugin. And then, of course, that would be awesome if every plugin has WP-CLI integration. I think, actually, I'm a bit surprised WordPress didn't pick up WP-CLI yet, because even they are using it themselves. I've seen there is a codex page on it now, so maybe that might be coming once. But I think actually they should embrace it and put it in their source, because that would make a lot of sense. So that's it for the plugin manifesto. I hope you can read these a bit. Is it okay? Yeah. So what I did is I made some kind of a abstract class, and actually that's why I asked Marco earlier. It's called the WP plugin. It's a bit like the WordPress plugin class. It's like a base class. Actually, every plugin should extend. So this would be the definition of a plugin. And it has some things. It has not everything yet, but it gives a good idea of what I want to do. One of the things, of course, the name and a slug. This is for the plugin. Sorry, I need to drink a bit. So, but then also options. Right? Don't look how it's structured now because it makes no sense. But the idea is that, like Joost did, you have a key value pairs for each option, and it should say the default value, it should say the different values that it could get, and it should say what it means. What is this option used for? And then if we do this, then in WP-CLI, we can give you a list of all the options the plugin can set. And also, when you install a plugin, we can tell a user, this is going to change these and these values. Do you want to actually do that or not? So that would be awesome to have it. And then a constructor, that's normal. And then by default, it has abstract functions for install, deactivate, uninstall, and commands. What does it mean, an abstract function? It means if you if your class extends this class, these functions need to be implemented. So if everyone uses this kind of a base class, there is no way they cannot do it. So then they say, I use a base class, and I'm doing it properly. Of course, you can put nothing in the function. That would be stupid. But at least people will know that there is something like that, because a lot of people don't know there is registration hooks. Okay? So the plugin would, the base class would do that for you. Also, you have getters and setters and deleters for options, so that you don't have to do the option prepending and prefixing and namespacing yourself. So it could do that for you. And then it has a nice system which I stole from Laravel framework, which we use most of the time. I'll show you in a bit. So let's run through this in detail. So the constructor, what does it do? It checks for the plugin name, it checks for the plugin slug, and it checks that the plugin slug is short enough. And then it stores these values. If WP-CLI is installed, it will run the commands because they have to be configured, so there will always be commands. It will register the activation, deactivation, and uninstall hooks. There should be a lot more, like WP admin, the init function, all these kind of things should be in here. So that there is always one place where a user has to go and check when they want to do something with your plugin, and it would be here. So when you disable a plugin at one place, it stops automatically doing everything it does. So that would be nice. Because right now, sometimes also plugins have like add action in one file, and add an action in another file, and then another action in another file. No, that's not how it works. That's how it works now, but it's not how it should work. So then, of course, you have, like I said, the abstract functions. Basically, you have to just extend them and put some stuff in them, which makes a lot of sense. And then you have the getters and the setters. These are a bit more complex. So what I did actually, I don't know if you know the concept of a magic method. It's a method that doesn't exist, right? It's like __ get or __ set in PHP. So what I did is, whenever you get a value, it checks if there is a magic method to get the value. I'll show you. I made a little example what it could be like. Just keep that in mind. So also for the setter, and then it will use the function or the method if it exists. If it doesn't exist, it will fall back to using an option. And you can see that the option name, I don't know where it is. Oh, it fell off the page. The option name is always coming from a method which is called option name. And what's in there, I think it's maybe on this slide. Yeah, it's just prepending it with the slug, so you don't have to do it yourself. But this also means whenever you're setting an option in your plugin, it will always automatically have the slug. Because right now you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to add a new option, and you forget about the slug, or you choose a different slug, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And the nice thing, if you put everything in a class, it will never interfere with anything else, because the class is already a sandbox. You can use, of course, the functions from outside the class, but if you define a new method in your class, no one else can use it without using your class, which is very nice. And then, of course, an exception. WordPress doesn't really work with exceptions. Back then, I don't know if they do yet now, but then you can easily catch any kind of issue with a plugin. So what I did it for, I don't know how to pronounce it, Akismet, right? Which is a spam thing, online spam checker that comes with every WordPress install. So I just downloaded WordPress yesterday and made a quick rewrite of it. So what I did actually, it was very easy because it's a very good plugin in some sense. What I did is I added the namespace, like I said. So whenever you, so I added the namespace automatic. So if one day another plugin developer would love to make a plugin which is also called Akismet, or which uses Akismet, and they want to use another class for it, they can just do it, right? So by using a namespace, you really sandbox your plugin, and it's a lot easier to make sure that you don't mess up other people's plugins. You can already do that now. Just add the namespace, and it's solving a lot of issues. This is just stuff from them, and it includes 2 classes. And then when a class is included, it's starting it. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. I just did it like this. So it just says new Akismet, and then the plugin is launched. And then you have the plugin class. So it's again namespaced. So it's Akismet, and it extends my WP plugin thing I wrote. So this is all default from them. So what it does in the constructor, it does a lot more things than what I did in my example. It calls the parent constructor. So it's doing all the install hooks and all this kind of crap automatically by itself. You don't have to even think about it. You just have to write the functions and it's done, right? And then it also does all the hooks they wanted to do. So this is still wrong. This is not going to work. Don't look at it. You have to namespace it here as well. But you get the idea. So you call the default ones, and then you also do your own stuff. If you don't want to call the default ones, you can even leave that away, but then you're, of course, getting away of the concept, and that's not a good idea. So then this is the magic method I was talking about. What they do at Automatic, they have some kind of a constant also you can set in your, I guess, config file. So if you have it enabled in your config file, they will use a constant for the API key instead of getting it from the option. Again, here, the option is not really good. This should also be this get option, and then it would only be option API key and not the prefix, of course. So what you can see is this method is the magic method. So whenever you would call on the class API_key, it will get in this method, because that's how I wrote it here. Where is it again? It's here. So this is get API_key attribute. So when you go here, get API key attribute, it will just go into this function. This is if you want to override the default this get behavior. So what you do is you just call this get, it's on the top there, API_key, right? And then it will first check if there is a magic method available, which is, so it will do this. If it's not there, it will get it from the database automatically. So that's very nice. So this is the start of it. Then of course you have the install hooks, the deactivate and the uninstall hooks. They have good install hooks, but I didn't find, again, I believe, I'm not sure. I didn't find those 2. Maybe I skipped them or something, but but you see, you have to have them there, because otherwise PHP is going to complain if you haven't implemented them. Then it says that your clause is not correct. So that's very nice. So it's a little bit like a contractor saying like, I'm going to do this kind of technique, and then PHP is going to even complain if you don't do it correctly. So that's very nice. So it's signing a contract like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make my plugin compatible with every other thing, and then that will be very nice. And then, of course, you have the commands. So you just register WP-CLI commands like this, and then you can use it from the command line. I mean, these are things, these things exist, right? They have them in their admin system, but of course they need to have a WP-CLI, I mean a command line output. Right now it's HTML output, you will have to change them a bit, but basically you could do that easily. So, and these are called by default in my constructor, I think. Where is it? Sorry. So these are called only when WP-CLI is enabled. So then it will call the commands, so then they will execute, I mean, you can execute them. So then also for a plugin developer, it's really easy to add a command to WP-CLI. The only thing you have to do is this. It's already like that. If you have a plugin and you want to have a WP-CLI command, the only thing you have to do is this. Writing this and it's done. It's so easy, so do it. So this is a bit, so actually, like I said, it is a bit of a contract that you say, I want to make a good WordPress plugin, so I'm going to do all these kind of things. I'm not the person who can bring this into practice. It's the developers that are writing WordPress code now, but I hope one day it will be possible to have something like this, because right now WordPress plugins are just a big mess. So, and this is what I explained earlier. The nice thing about namespaces is then that you can have the same class name, right, from different providers or namespaces. So Automatic could make cache implementation, W3 Total Cache could do it, Super Cache could do it, and you could write something yourself. But the nice thing is, if those people all define that we're going to use a similar interface, right, then you can be sure you can just switch caches. Right now, it's not. I think in WordPress it's already a bit possible. But if you would do this for sharing, for example, then, for example, that would be a WP share that you could extend for sharing and making it your own sharing. Then it would be very easy to have sharing on your blog post like you want it, right? So that's some stuff that is possible if you start working like this, but right now it's not. So in an ideal world, we have a standardized interface for a lot of things in WordPress. So plugins is one thing, but there's a lot of common things in WordPress. So for every plugin developer, they should be able to, if they want to do a certain thing, they should be able to just use an interface from Automatic or from WordPress for it. And also a new hook model, which is based on classes, like I explained earlier, so that you, in your class, need to have those certain hooks, and that WordPress could automatically detect those hooks instead of having them to define them in the constructor. So then it will be a very flexible system. So the one thing I always heard about WordPress is, yeah, we need to have backwards compatibility and yeah, the old users, but we'll have to kill them off at some point. Right now, they're really trying to keep everything with the add hooks and everything. I mean, add action, what is it again? What is it? Add filter. But these things are so outdated. They are like 10 years old or something, and that's not going to work anymore in a couple of years, I guess. So one day they will have to decide to cut this off, and I hope if they do, they will use this kind of a technique. So if we as developers already start doing it, they will see it's the right choice, and then they will start doing it as well. I spoke with Andreas like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I told him, you have to do this, and he said, like, yeah, propose something. So here it is, after 3 years. So yeah, so that's it actually. I still have some time, so you guys want some more, or yes or no? I have. So this is a slide I add to any presentation I give for developers, of course. Who has done caching before? Who has done it correctly? So there is one thing in caching, and it's, I don't know how it's called, I don't know how many people encounter it, and I don't know how many people even know about it, but it's huge. And actually all the caching classes I check out, they don't even think about it. So I figured out this issue when I was working at the Next Web. So we had on prime time, for example, we had a page there when there was like a huge hack from Lulsec, it was called, I think. And so there was like millions of people on our site at the same time. And then we had, sometimes the site would just die, giving a 503 at a certain point in time. And then for a while it ran correctly and very fast, and then it would drop again. And I was really thinking like, what exactly is going on here? Because we have proper caching enabled, we have varnish cache, we have mem cache, we have the page cache from W3 total cache. I was really confused. And then I figured this out. So when you write a cache, I should have made a little drawing, but when you write a cache, right, you put a TTL on it, time to live. So you say, I write this cache, I write it for 60 seconds or whatever time frame. And what you do is, when a user, actually I think I have a slide. Ah yeah, I have a slide which does it wrong. That's great. So, who can tell me what's wrong? Just take a quick look. I'll explain you what it does. It's a very basic function. It has a TTL, of course. It has an ID it's trying to get from the cache. It has a cache key. It loads it from the cache. If there is no cache, it goes to load the data, and then it sets the cache and it returns the data. If the cache is there, it just returns the cache data, which makes sense. Anyone can point me out what's wrong? No, that's what I figured. I don't know if anyone knows this actually. Maybe it's only me, I'm just crazy. So the big issue is, if you do this, right, let's see what happens. If you have thousands of users at the same time on your site, right, the cache invalidates for everyone at the same time, right? So that means, because it's a TTL. So that means if thousands of users end up here, right, and the cache is invalidated, then they end up here. And thousands of users do this heavy loading, and then your site goes down, right? They're all doing the loading at the same time. It's not only one user doing it, because there are so many users coming in. It's not only one user doing it, but hundreds of users, right? And that's a pain, of course, because then your database goes down like in seconds. So how to solve this? It's very easy, and I don't get why no one is doing it, actually. So what you should do is, this is exactly the same code. The only thing I added is this, I think, yeah. So what it does is, when you get something from the cache, right, there is something in the cache which is an expiry date, right? And I have a special magic function which is made with a lot of cache sets. And I'll show you what it does. Where is it? Here? Yeah, here it is. What it does is it sets a cache, but within the cache, it puts the expiry date in the cache, and it puts the expiry date of the actual cache within memcache longer than the expiry date of the than the cache object itself. So this is an expiry date, but the expiry date of the item in the cache is longer than the expiry date of the item in the cache, actually. So what we do then is, when the first user hits the empty cache, right? So it's a cache, but it's not empty. When the first user hits the expired cache, what you do is you just put the cache again with the same data, so nothing has loaded yet, right? And then you put the TTL again. So this means that the entry for the cache is prolonged with a certain time. Only for this user. But at the same, and this user will be very slow because it doesn't have the data yet. But all the other users, so those other 999 other users, they will just get the return from the cache, because setting the cache is instantly, it's very fast. But if you need to do loading, which takes a lot of milliseconds, then you're screwed. So then only this user is going to do the loading, and when he's done, he sets it in the cache and he returns the data. So actually, you reduce the database loads by 1,000 because of this very simple technique. And I don't understand why no one is doing it, and it even works. I mean, then people tell me like, yeah, but what if your cache expires before you have loaded it again? It's not an issue. Then you'll have the same old issue again, but this is already an improvement. And you can play with this time it's added. I just added here now as a magic number. It's not a good idea. But this should be, of course, a little bit more than the time it takes to load your data. Not too much more. So then when the loading fails or something, then you're not screwed. So yeah, this is a very nice system. So use it. It's very easy to implement. What else do we have here? Yeah, this is the whole thing. So it's very easy to read also, very simple code. I mean, it doesn't make sense I share it because it's so easy. And then I think that's it. So my company is always hiring. We hired in the last 6 weeks, I think 5 people, so you're always welcome. So just send us an email or go to our website and you can see our jobs there. And this will happen on Friday. We are a remote team, so that means that everyone in the team is sitting at home or in a co-working space. I'll not run through everyone, but in this picture we have Portugal, Brazil, France, the Netherlands, and Germany, I think, and Belgium, of course. Yeah, this is my office is in the factory of Stella Artois. I don't know if you know the beer. It's really true. It's not a joke. So my office is in their old brewery. So are there any other questions about my talk or myself or whatever? Yeah, sure. Need to get the mic up there.
First, thank you for your talk. I love it.
You're welcome.
Regarding caching, there is always one thing that itches me. Why you use time-limited caching when you have the admin under full control? So you somehow know that your post or article or whatever has not changed because there was no save. So why just every 60 minutes?
Yeah, that's not a. I mean, this is a really. That's like I said. This is an example I use with everything. So it's not only with WordPress. It goes up for everything. But you're right. Why do you do that? At the next step, we had indeed a system where we invalidated the caches manually, which makes a lot of sense. But if your WordPress admin crashes while saving, you're screwed because you don't know which blog post you're editing. So you always have to put a TTL on a cache for not 60 seconds, but for like 1 day or quite a good amount of time. And also, for example, if you have a small blog, then yes, you go into the header bar and go into the performance tab from W3 total cache, you go in there and you say clear all caches because you don't care. But if you have a blog with millions of users, you cannot do that because then the whole site goes down. So that's why you should have a way also to have TTLs defined in your caches. And this is really only if you, for example, have, what we do is, for example, we cache the static HTML. So the output of WordPress we would cache at the next web. So we would have actually the front end of the next web is basically has nothing to do anymore with WordPress. It's running within WordPress. We're not using any WordPress functions there because it's just too slow. Or that was when I was working there. I don't know how they're doing it now. But then, of course, you still have the admin of WordPress. And yeah. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And another thing, the class, the WP plugin is quite nice, but I was missing a small bit. There is not automatic generation of Composer JSON, isn't it?
No, no. So basically, like I said, it's just pseudocode. I wrote it yesterday evening. I have no idea it works. It's just an idea I'm running around for like 3 years already. So.
Yeah. Do you think that WordPress will ever be able to say WordPress is my dependency in Composer?
Actually, I think you can already say WordPress is a dependency.
I've seen the task issue or the issue in the backlist, and it's quite long and
yeah, I
no
can
result
imagine.
at all.
I've actually, like I said, I haven't used WordPress in 2 years, so I have no clue, but it should be possible if they do things correctly. But then they have to, of course, have a composer.json file in their source, and I'm not sure they do now. So, I don't know. It should be doable because you can have post and scroll scripts and you can everything, so why not? Any other questions? Yeah, there is one in the back there.
It's okay. I was just looking at query posts, or error posts, at the source of WP cache get.
Yeah.
And if it misses the cache,
Sorry?
there's the possibility that it misses the cache.
Yeah.
And it has an internal counter and just counts it up. And if it misses it, then it sets it the return value to false. So in that case, your heavy load something heavy will trigger anyway.
Yeah.
So I suggest to just check if not cache and not cache or cache property missed is lower than 1.
So, what this would return something different, you say?
It will return false if you miss the cache.
Yeah, that's normal.
And in that case, it doesn't need to return the cache.
You mean that it could not reach the cache, right? You mean that it could not reach the cache? Like it's trying to read the entry, it exists, but you cannot get it. That's what you're saying, right? But yeah, then.
This is what the source said.
Yeah, but then of course you need to get it, otherwise the user sees nothing, right? If you can't get it, you need to get it anyway. If you can get it from the cache, you need to load it from the database anyway. But then you have a different issue, then your mem cache is down or whatever, right? Yeah. Like I said, this code is not tested. Don't try this at home. This is just to get an idea. This is, I mean, I wrote this this morning in the plane because I was thinking maybe my talk is a bit too short, so I always add this thing. So normally I do it with a caching class, so, but in WordPress they like to have this function, so why not? Okay, anything else? No? So who's going for beer tonight? Ah, there we go. So great. Okay, thanks for having me, and if there's anything, you can always bump into me. I don't know anything about WordPress except for what it was 3 years ago, but maybe I can still be anything to you. Okay, cool, thanks.